Welcome back to VintageDrumsTalk.com. Jim Messina here once again, and we're talking to Roger North of the famous North Drum Company. He is the creator. Say hello, Roger.
Hello, folks.
How you doing, my friend?
All right.
Good to have you back. You know, we were just talking with Roger about the original first North Drum that he ever made. If you didn't see that, go back to part 2 and watch it, and we're going to pick it up right there. Roger, let me ask you this about what happened after you finally made that original raw drum. I imagine you took it on some gigs and people started questioning you about it, but what happened from there to get to the point where you were actually getting calls to, sell these things? How'd it go?
Well, I mean, right from the start, people were interested in it, obviously, because it was a different thing, and
even without hearing it, I imagine.
Huh?
Even without hearing it, I imagine they would just look at it and be interested.
Yeah. But and so it pretty clearly, I needed to make a whole set of drums, and so that first one was a 12-inch head. And I mean, the thing was huge and pretty heavy, So I said, well, and as it turns out, it sounded best when I tuned it pretty low. I mean, it sounded almost like a floor tom, So I said, I don't need to make a bigger drum than this. What I need to do is go do some smaller drums, smaller drums, like a 10-inch, an 8-inch. Maybe even a 6-inch, But at that time, it was just I decided, okay, I'm going to make a 10-inch head drum and an 8-inch drum and a kick drum.
Okay, and I imagine you had to keep in mind the contemporary sizes so you could get hoops, right?
So I did that. I made the 8-inch and the 10-inch and the 8-inch, and those worked out pretty well. Made them kind of in the same fashion, raw fiberglass, one-off, no reusable mold or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting. The kick drums, the first kick drums I made 2 of them because I was playing a double set at the time, and I wanted them to be just as loud as the other drums turned out to be. So I made these 2 kick drums. They had 18-inch heads, and they were 33 inches long, 33 inches deep. In other words, they were like shotgun things, and the opening was, I believe, 22 inches.
That's interesting because the standard at that time was basically, I think, 14-inch
14
depths.
by 22.
Yeah. Everything was 14 by 22, 14 by 20, blah blah blah. But the depth was always 14.
These were like 33 by 18.
Uh-huh.
With a big opening, and not many people saw those drums. I still have the shelves. And I used them. I mean, they were huge. They were 33 inches long. They were just these gigantic things that looked like, if you stood them on end, they looked like tree trunks. And I used them. They had some problems. I mean, they were in the front. They were really loud. They did exactly what I wanted them to.
Yeah.
But from my end, the 18-inch end, I couldn't hear them very well, and the guys in the band couldn't hear them very well because all the sound was being so efficiently focused forward that it just wasn't happening. And plus they were just I designed them not out of any kind of practicality mindset. It was more like, I'm going to make these things as loud as I possibly can, and make them fit the set, and so those are the only 2 I ever made, and so after that I made a more standard 22-inch, I think it was like 20 inches deep, so it was deeper than a normal kick drum, but it was sort of a more standard shape, pretty similar to the ones that eventually got made in production.
Now
22-inch head with like a 24-inch opening, that kind of thing.
Yeah, think how ahead of their time that was, because 20th. Nothing is unusual about a 20th depth now in drums.
Right.
Yeah, you were ahead of your time there.
Yeah.
So about quality control at that time, you're just
Now,
making.
there was no quality control. I was just making them myself,
this
one
was
at a time in my apartment. Ruined another apartment in the process.
With no thoughts of ever mass producing these. This was just for yourself, right?
At that time, I was just making them for myself. I did apply for a patent because people, I was aware that there's nothing like this anywhere. So I applied for a patent. I was still in Boston at the time, and I made all these drums, and I applied for the patent. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. And when you apply for a patent, it takes a few years for it actually to get approved. There's always some back and forth between the patent office and the patent attorney and all that stuff. But I just wanted to do it because I felt like it.
I believe you sent me a drawing of that. We'll put up a drawing of that. I think we have is this the original patent drawing that you did?
Yeah, that's the drawing off the actual patent.
And what are the dimensions in this drawing supposed to be? I don't remember if this was for
they don't actually put dimensions on it.
Okay.
It's not.
It's the concept.
It's not dimensional. It's the concept.
I see.
It's not really the concept, but it's the shape.
Yeah, and you can see it right there. That's pretty cool. I like that. Huh.
Yeah, and all those little numbers, on the later pages, each one of those numbers refers to some little description of the shape. It's actually it's really old school, and it's really kind of fascinating.
So now, you're making these just for yourself. You've come up with how many drums now?
One set of drums, just 1, 2, 3, really 4 drums. And I made one other tom of a really weird shape that necked down really small and then back out into a bell, which really didn't work very well. But that was just kind of an experimental thing. So, but the basic set was 4 drums.
So I imagine you're getting better at this now. You made the first one, didn't know what you're doing, trial and error, and you got it. Now you're going to make these others. You've already done it. Are you able to make them quicker now?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I learned a little bit. Obviously, I didn't know about working with fiberglass before I did it, so I learned a little bit. But I'm not sure. I was basically using the same techniques. I wasn't. I don't know that I was really getting better at it.
but each one that you tried,
I didn't really. It wasn't. I really wanted to play them. I built the drums, but my passion was more playing them, and I didn't. It wasn't in my mind to become a drum company. At that point.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm seeing in.
But people, we would play with all these. We would open for all these bands, and people would come to me and say, "God, can you make me a set?" And I said, "Well, no, I don't have time."
Yeah.
And at one point later on, I was in a band called the Holy Modal Rounders, and we went over to Europe, and I think it was like in 1972, and I was still playing these drums, and we kind of hooked up with Paul McCartney when he was just starting Wings, and they came to see us, and they were kind of like, "What the hell is that?
What is that?" And
they invited us to come down to their concerts and everything, and I brought some toms and I showed it to Paul and everything, and he's going, "Oh, that's really neat." And as it turns out, they ended up, I can't remember the drummer's name, but he ended up buying a set a couple of years later.
So by this time,
but I was getting really good feedback from all these significant musical people that we'd like to have some of those, So it was. I still wasn't really wanting to do it, but it was becoming evident to me that there was a market for it.
Well, that's great. Now, in this particular picture that I have here of the first production set that you mentioned, is this the set that you were showing them, or you had extra drums to show these people? Were they just looking at yours?
I just still had the raw ones.
Okay, then they were commenting on your raw ones, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And then what happened is eventually, when we got back from Europe in 1972, we moved out to Oregon. The whole band came out here. The Holy Motor Rounders came out here, and we kind of settled here in the Portland area, and tried to do some things. We were still trying to get get a new record contract, and this and that. And I had a family by that time. I had a son who was born shortly after we got out here, and I don't know. This is a long side story, which I won't tell. But things were not going well with the band financially and everything. We were getting turned down for our bids, and I was kind of going through this thing of, man, I gotta do something to support my family. And it was starting to become obvious to me. I was in my late 20s by that time, and it was becoming obvious to me that I was not on a path to do that, So I thought, well, I've got this patent for the drums, and I've got a lot of people wanting them, so I'm gonna just devote a bunch of energy to doing this, And I went to this place that tried to market patents, which was like it's just like a chip joint kind of, and I didn't like what they were telling me, so I said, well, I'm just going to do it myself. I'm going to build the drums, spend some time. I know a little bit more about fiberglass now, and I'm going to build some nice ones that are nicely finished, smooth shells and shiny and
painted.
I've got some better ideas about what shape they need to be, and I'm just going to make it commercially acceptable, and instead of these funky raw fiberglass.
Okay, so in the beginning, you never intended to be a businessman,
6
right?
months making molds and just tooling up to do this thing. And this all happened in Oregon in 1970, probably 1973 by that time, or 74, I don't know. And so I didn't have any employees at the time. I was living out in the country, and I had this barn on my property that we were renting the property, and so I used the barn as a shop, and you probably have a picture of.
I got this picture up right now.
When I did hire people, but
this looks like an old barn, boy.
I was doing it all myself.
Sheesh.
And I built the molds and scrounged around, tried to get as much hardware as I could, and just started selling sets one by one.
So the idea was the shell
design. That would give me
design.
enough money to make 2 more sets. And,
Okay.
kind of went that way.
And I see in this picture, we've got 3 more guys standing there with you. I assume that's you on the left. What a motley crew, huh? This is a terrific shot. You want to tell us who your cohorts are there?
Yeah, so that's if you're looking at the picture, there's 4 of us there, and that's me on the left with the weird-looking air.
It's great. I'm loving
pilot
it.
hat or something.
It looks
and
cool.
Next to me with the sunglasses is Ken Wertheimer. And the third guy with the sort of Russian-looking hat is Steve Warner. And the one on the right looks like an ex-biker, which he was at the time. His name is Kerry Camp. And Kerry was actually the first one that started working for me. And he had been a sound man for the Holy Motor Rounders for a while, and I knew him as a friend.
Okay.
He lived out near that barn, so I hired him to help me out.
And did they know anything about, did they know anything about fiberglass, or were you having to now teach them?
No, I kind of designed all the processes.
Okay, and you just told them what to do.
Yeah, and they were pretty good. They were good at it, and we kind of got it done. That was a funky barn.
I'm looking at it here.
Is there a little fan in the background?
Yes, you can see it through the door, the sliding door that looks like it's made out of just plywood.
Like a 10-inch window fan or something.
You can see it clearly.
That was the exhaust fan for the spray booth, and that was our entire exhaust fan.
Isn't that amazing?
Totally inadequate, and
yeah.
severe fire hazard. I mean, I can't believe we didn't blow up that barn.
Now, was this on a large piece of property or secluded?
Yeah, well, it was out in the country. Yeah, it was out on a little like 2-acre farm area. Beautiful little property.
Yeah. Now the shells that
east of Portland, about 20 miles.
I'm seeing shells, in front of all you guys in this picture. We see 4 shells. Yeah. They seem to be, painted inside, and they're black painted on the outside.
Well, that's not paint. That's actually the way you do that is you spray the color on the mold. You wax the mold, and then you spray the color on the mold.
I see.
They're smooth on the inside and the outside, which is why they're hard to make.
Yeah.
So you have an inside mold. Those ones look like they had white coloring sprayed on the inside mold, and the outside mold probably was black. Those are probably black, and so you spray that color on the outside mold, and then you spray a bunch of fiberglass. And I mean, it's pretty involved, but basically you spray a bunch of fiberglass on the inside mold, and then squish it into the assembled outside mold, and they pop out of the mold looking like that.
Now, at this point, is the quality getting to be the same, or are they still uneven, or what do we got going on?
Oh no,
here?
They're smooth. They're nice and smooth and shiny, and doing that took me 6 months to make the patterns for those molds.
Okay,
so
now
that was actually a big deal, learning how to do that, and it's like you just got to build these things to sort of more exacting dimensions, and then you got to sand them and smooth them. It's like doing auto body work. In fact, I used a lot of auto body materials, like Bondo and things like that, and just sanded them and just worked on them until they were smooth.
So the drums I'm seeing in this picture at your feet, the 4 of you, were these before or after the drums that I see in the first production set here that we've got with
they're probably like right around the same era.
Now, speaking of that set, we were talking about some of the hardware that was used on there. You had to scrounge up your own hardware, right? You didn't have anything set yet as far as hoops, lugs. I see, like I said, I see a Swivel-matic pedal.
And at one point, I tried to. I think the first 4 sets worth of drums, I got some hardware from. I managed to buy it wholesale through a distributor from Ludwig, and then they kind of pulled the plug on me.
No.
I mean, it got back to me that Ludwig was not interested in selling hardware to a possible competitor.
They viewed you as
kind of went away.
They viewed you as a competitor, I see. But you weren't buying large numbers, were you? You weren't able to at that time, were you?
No. It was like 4 sets at a time worth of hardware, which is all I could afford.
Yeah. I'm seeing.
So things got a little tough, and then I started. I figured, well, geez, I think I'm going to have to make my own hardware, So I started. I designed some lugs basically made out of solid steel, and I milled off one side so they were flat where they sat on the drum, and drilled them out and cut these little kind of brass inserts with pins in the back that were threaded that would take the tension rods, but still swivel,
Yeah.
And so I designed those things, and I did manage to find some tension rods that were kind of generic. They're probably Japanese or something.
So there was no plating involved here with those lugs?
Huh?
There was no plating involved, chrome or anything for those lugs?
There was plating of the lugs. Yeah, I had that was a big deal, actually. I mean, they had to be polished and plated, which was not cheap.
Right, that you sent that out.
I mean, I ended up doing the polishing myself for a while, which was a big pain in the neck.
But the actual plating, you sent them out to be plated, right?
Excuse me?
You had to send those pieces out to be plated? Chrome?
Yeah.
Okay, and then you did the polishing yourself. Okay.
Well, you polish them first. You have, the way chrome plating works is you have to polish whatever you're plating. If you want the chrome to be shiny like we think of chrome
Mm-hmm.
and smooth, you need to polish the underlying metal first.
Right.
And then the plating goes on, and then it looks all bright and shiny like that.
I have had a little bit of experience with that.
If you chrome plate something that's rough,
Sure,
it's
going to
still
show
rough.
through.
You know, it's just silver.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know that before I did it.
Well, I could see that hardware was a real problem.
The polishing is actually the more difficult part. You know.
Yeah. What about this stand here? I see we have a basically a rack stand by today's standards that we would call that a rack, but it looks like it's made out of galvanized pipe.
Half-inch galvanized pipe. Yeah, right. That's the original rack stand. That was the birth of the rack stand, and that came because these drums are weird shape, and they're too heavy to sit on the bass drum, and that was another problem that had to be solved. I said I got to figure out some way to put these drums up so they're playable and so it's adjustable and everything. And so, again, not having any money, I worked with what resources were available, and I knew, hey, I can make this thing out of pipe elbows and pipe tees.
Yes, I can see that here.
And it worked just fine, and it was cheap and everything. But when I started actually selling the drums, people would say, God, the drums are great, but you got to do something about that stand, And the concept was beautiful, I mean, the concept was great. It kept the weight off the bass drum, and it worked really well.
And I can see,
as we have seen through the years, the rack stand has lasted.
Oh yeah,
everybody's making rack stands now.
Yeah,
so
it's a standard
but that's how
thing.
It started out, and then later on, I started making them out of 1.25-inch pipe and getting it bent and doing everything. Putting collars on it so that things were adjustable. But I think that first rack stand, the rods that supported the drums actually there was a hole drilled in the horizontal piece of pipe, and the mount was actually, the rod that the tom's mount on was actually bolted to the pipe, so it wasn't that adjustable.
It's all part of the evolution of the North drums as we know them. We're walking through with Roger North here today, the whole story about how he did it from the conception to all up until he sold out to MTI, and we'll get back to that in just a little bit. We're going to tell you all about it. We're here with Roger North. Roger, thanks for talking with me. I'll see you in the next segment, and folks, you hang on. We'll be right back.